Welcome back. We wanted to keep talking about bringing out the best in people. So we've been going on a series, my favorite people skills book. There's so much to dive into. So let's go ahead and start. Welcome back to Unlocked. If you've been listening, appreciate you. If you can share this on your Slack channel, WhatsApp, group me, and send it to somebody who maybe hasn't listened to it yet. Hit subscribe. It helps us grow. And of course, every time I see you guys, whether it's at a meeting or somewhere, I always get reminded like, hey, Richard, keep doing YouTube. So I appreciate you guys from my heart. I do it for the people. So I wanted to keep talking about this. Okay, we talked last week about, rules 4, 5, and 6. So we're moving into rule number 7, 8, and 9. And we'll keep going a couple more of these. Rule number 7 to bringing out the best in people is recognize and applaud achievement. So when I was rereading this chapter, it just talks about, handing out compliments in public. People just sometimes, naturally, human beings, we crave and we desire the appreciation in front of others because it kind of gives us like an overall, like a marching order of approval. And it is so powerful where you can accomplish something in private, but you can also accomplish it in public in a positive way. And it creates such a good environment. It also creates it helps you kind of shape the culture of what you want around. So always applauding and using achievement. Another thing you can do is using every success story as a reason for celebration. So anything that's successful, even the smallest things, as a matter of fact, especially the smallest things, it's harder to do this. The longer you've been around doing the same thing, we forget how valuable the small things are, because that is what people do when they get started at something, is they accomplish very little things. And honestly, that's how we all started at one point. So using every success story to recognize and applaud achievement. And I remember the third thing that I thought of when I was reading this chapter is, if you could add, if when you're applauding somebody or you're recognizing somebody, if you could add some weight to it, if you can throw in a gesture to really show your personal appreciation, it goes a long way. And I'm talking about little things like, I'm talking about somebody's gesture, I'm talking about somebody's achievement, and we're all applauding it, we're really shaping their behavior, and I'm going up to that person and giving them a hug or a pat on the back, or I'm handing them like a card, a small gesture to make company to the achievement really, really makes a difference. Think about those letters. Think about those handwritten letters that you got for your birthday or that somebody wrote for you. You might not keep them around. You might have them all in one drawer, but you did appreciate that more than the person that texted you happy birthday, because you could see there was a little more effort. And that is the point of the gesture, is that you can just recognize and applaud achievement, but you can also add a gesture, a sign of effort, and it goes such a long way for such little more effort, which is why it'll bring the best out of people. Rule number 8 is employing a combination of positive and negative. You cannot improve if you only focus on the positive. So we're going to bring out the best in people, but we're going to do it in a way that it doesn't. We're going to bring out the best in people. We can't do it in a way that we ignore all the negatives and all the weaknesses. However, if we live and stay within the weaknesses, then we're going to have an issue. We cannot, again, win if we only focus on positives. We do have to focus sometimes on the weaknesses. And you're probably wondering, well, so Richard, what's the ratio? Because we can't live just on the negatives. The book talks about John Wooden, which is, by the way, has a great book on leadership, UCLA coach for basketball. And they measured and tracked, and you can find this in the book. They measured and tracked how many times John Wooden would use positive reinforcement, and how many times he would use negative reinforcement. And it was 7% positive reinforcement, 14% negative reinforcement. So actually, such a great coach, probably one of the best coaches ever in college basketball, actually used double the amount of negatives than he used positive. But one thing that they noted on the book is that very often he would say, don't do it this way, do it that way. He demonstrated the proper method. He didn't only point out the negatives, he then followed up with, this is how you do it. So instead of yelling or commanding or reprimanding people for just the negative, he followed up with, this is the right way, which always helps people crave direction. So when you're giving somebody negative reinforcement and you're somehow punishing a behavior that you don't want repeated. It's very important that not necessarily follow it up with a compliment. You don't want to, scold somebody for something they've done wrong and immediately tell them how handsome they are. That would not make sense. What you want to do though is say, hey, this is the right way how you do it. Like, I've been learning a lot about this while parenting my 3-year-old kid. And it's very interesting for those of you that have kids, you know this, but if you don't have kids, it doesn't matter. This really helps. Understanding that my kid doesn't know what to do. So if I just tell him to quit throwing his hands out in the air, or if I tell my son, hey, you cannot hit people, or you cannot throw that toy to your mom or to your babysitter, then that doesn't really help, because now he only knows what not to do. So next time he feels that rage or that fury or that urge to throw his hands out, he's not going to know what to do. He's probably going to repeat the action, because again, when we're in a moment of maybe less tolerance, we just don't know what to do, we react with not always the best choice. So I remember learning and telling my son now, hey, you don't do that, and you do not throw things at people. The next time you're angry, here's what you can do. You can come to dad, or you can hold your hands really tight and do something else. Again, the point is giving somebody direction, not just pointing out the negative, but it's very important that you're using negatives and that you're pointing out weaknesses, again, just mixed in with direction and positive reinforcement as well. And rule number 9, to bring out the best in people, it says appeal sparingly to the competitive urge. So, and you're like, well, what does that mean? It means that it's very important to create a competitive atmosphere. It's very important in a sales world. It's very important in a team building world. It's honestly very important in a performance world, which is what this world's about. You can have whatever college degree you want. You can have whatever you think you deserve. But unless you work for it, the world's not going to give it to you once you're in the real world and you're in the workforce and you're in real life. I was meeting yesterday with a client, and he's a very successful man. And he was talking about how he used to work for a Fortune 50 company. He was the number 1 out of 38, top rep in the sales board, 1 out of 38 for every metric, for sales, for compliance, for churn. He was number 1. And when the VP position had opened for that company, and he was first in line, they gave it to somebody else. And the reality is that whether it was fair or not, even when you do all the work, not always you don't always get the cookie. So you have to learn to create a competitive atmosphere, but careful that you create such a competitive atmosphere that people start hating against each other and the competitive urge becomes toxic. And you've seen it. You've probably been in an environment in which people are so competitive that they're actually messing each other up. They're actually not really helping. They're creating, they're going back and forth. They're now almost rooting for that team to go under versus actually being happy for my peers. And this is something I've experienced in very few places where there's a highly, highly competitive environment, but still a good heart towards the people that are winning. It's usually the people that understand abundance. And that's why I like talking about religion here and what I believe. And, the Bible talks a lot about abundance, and it is true. And you'll talk to Christian people, you talk to people that believe in God, and they'll understand this very well, because if I'm competing in a market for having a lot of people in my office, I know there's hundreds and thousands, millions, 7 or 8 million people in the DFW area. The fact that you have a big team does not mean I have a smaller team, but because there's enough people for both of us to have the largest, record-breaking teams. And that is because we understand abundance. People, when they don't understand abundance, they usually are the ones that become competitive in a toxic way. So watch out. If you have anyone on your team that they think that for you to get recognition means they don't, or if you don't get recognition, they do, the reality is there could be achievements, recognition for both, negatives for both, because we live in a world of abundance. So you have to create a competitive urge, an environment of competition, but you have to be careful not to turn it into a toxic thing, because that also could ruin everything you've been working on. So again, these are rules 7, 8, and 9 for bringing out the best in people by Alan Lloyd McGinnis, and we'll see you at the next one.